Do you want to move to Australia? Well, good thing you clicked on this video because I'm going to help you feel more confident and prepared about a big move down under. If you're new around here, hi, my name is Dain. I am a Brit living in Australia. I have been here for the last 2 years. I have traveled Australia extensively and I have made so many videos about moving to Australia on a working holiday visa. If you want some more resources down below, I have a free mini guide. I have an ebook with over 100 pages that you can purchase, and there's some other helpful stuff down there as well. This video is going to be a bit of a long one, but I promise it's going to cover so much valuable information that it'll be worth it. So maybe grab a cuppa or a coffee. I'm just going to jump straight into it. I have divided this video into 4 stages, and the first stage is the preparation stage. I'm just going to get a bit more comfortable. Is anyone else just like sitting on their feet, or is it just me? The first piece of the puzzle is deciding when and how you are moving to Australia. So firstly, I would recommend before you do anything else in this video, because I've seen people go against this advice, before you do anything else, you need to purchase the visa. Don't book your flight, purchase the visa. If you know that you are going to want to move to Australia in the next year, you should just buy that visa now. All you need is a valid passport. When you apply for the visa, it will ask you a bit about your health and where you're from. And one of the criteria is you need to be able to evidence that you have at least 5,000 Australian dollars in your bank account. So if it's in euros or UK, you can just take a screenshot of your bank account and upload this document. The other thing that you may need is a health check. So depending on certain countries that you've traveled to, I know one of them is Indonesia. If you're planning to work in childcare or the healthcare system and you've been to Indonesia, it is highly likely that you will be requested to get like chest x-rays and stuff like that. It's very normal. I also do know just like randomly people get asked to do health assessments, which is why I'm telling you to book the visa first, because you don't know how long it's going to take to get the visa. My first working holiday visa took 3 months to be approved. I'm from the UK. There should have been it should have just been instant. I knew so many people that got their visas instantly. Mine took 3 months. My second visa took 6 weeks. So it's better just to get the visa straight away, and that way there's not going to be any problems. The next thing that you'll need to buy is travel insurance, which brings me on to the sponsor of today's video, Safety Wing. So I left the UK 3 years ago. I didn't know when I was coming home, but I did know something. I needed travel insurance. I hopped onto Google to find my travel insurance. That's when I noticed something. Most traditional travel insurers only cover you for a set time, but not Safety Wing. I use the Nomad insurance because it works on a subscription basis, meaning if I don't need it anymore, I can cancel it. But 3 years later, and I'm still covered, still traveling. It's perfect for long-term travelers, digital nomads, and people heading down under. For as little as $2 a day, I have peace of mind that whilst I'm traveling around the world, Safety Wing has got my back. What's even better is they recently got rid of the deductible, meaning if I have to make a claim, I pay zero, zilch. I'll leave a link down below in my description so you can get insured for your big adventure. Thanks to Safety Wing for partnering with me on this video. Now let's get back to the tips so you guys can move to Australia. If you are coming to Australia, you should save as much cash as possible. Now, one of the most common questions I get is, Dain, how much money should I save before I go? Now, there's 2 parts to this answer. Firstly, are you planning to move to Australia and start working straight away? Because if so, you'll need less money. If you are planning to travel Australia, you will need more money. So this is a general guide. You don't have to follow what I say, but I have lived here for a long time. I've traveled a lot, so I know that things are really expensive here. So if you are just coming to move to Australia and you're going to start work straight away, or you're going to look for work, I think the recommended 5,000 Australian dollars is more than enough. Personally, I would try and save as much money as possible because you never know what's going to happen. If you are planning to travel Australia, I would budget at least 1,000 Australian dollars per week. Now, I know what you're thinking, Dain, that sounds like so much money. It is. You are not going to want to come here and, skip all the activities on the East Coast or, rent in a car or wherever it may be. $1,000 per week is like a really good amount of money to get you the most out of your travels in Australia. If you were coming to Australia and you were planning to travel for 6 weeks and then start finding a job, I would recommend you bring $11,000. So that's like what, £5,500? 6 weeks worth of travel money, and then you've got 5 weeks or $5,000 to get you started. And I would say that $5,000 would pay your living expenses, food costs, gym membership, bond money, first couple of weeks rent money. It's just better to have as much money as possible. So consider getting a second job, consider working more hours, consider getting a side hustle to save that money. I've been there. I know it's tough saving for your first big trip, but trust me, it's worth it. So once you've got your visa, once it's been approved, do not book your flight until it has been approved, because I've literally read comments on Facebook from the Facebook groups, which I'll talk about, where people have put, help me, I've got my flight tomorrow and I still haven't got my visa. And it's like, you need your visa before you can book a flight. Like, they're not gonna let you on the plane. So a few things to know about getting a flight. So firstly, you don't have to prove a return journey because the visa is for a year. You can't actually book flights more than a year in advance. So just, I get a few messages about, you know, do I need to book a return flight? You don't. Once your visa is approved, it will be linked to your passport. So when you land, they just know that you've entered the country. After you've got your visa, you're gonna wanna book a flight. I always use Skyscanner to search for the best deals. Try being a bit flexible and look at the school holidays in Australia. So if you don't know, because Australia is in the southern hemisphere, it means the summer is in the UK's winter time. So the Australian summer holidays go from Christmas time, 6 weeks until the end of January. So keep that in mind, that if you're traveling in the school summer holiday season or any school holiday season in Australia, the flights are going to be a lot more expensive. So definitely just be a bit flexible with where you're flying through, but I would 100% look through Skyscanner, and if you can, book directly with the airline, because it's such an expensive flight. Like on average, it's going to cost at least £500, maybe £600, maybe £700 to fly from, say, London to Australia, and it's not worth messing it up. So you would need to decide, where do you want to start your journey? Is that going to be Sydney, Darwin, Perth, Brisbane, Melbourne? These are the top destinations that travelers typically fly into. So look at the travels that you want to do, or if you've got any job opportunities there, and decide, okay, this is where I'm going to fly into, and book your flight for that. And then you're going to book your first accommodation. And I would strongly recommend booking at least 7 nights in the first place. I will get onto this in a little bit in the next stage, but I recommend 7 days just so you can get yourself set up, and it's obviously a long way, so you're probably going to be jet lagged. Most people that don't travel typically only have like 1, maybe 2 debit or credit cards. I think I have 7, and the reason I have 7 is because I travel, and you should never travel without more than a few credit and debit cards. This card that I'm about to talk about is probably one of my biggest recommendations as a traveler. It's called a Wise card. I'll link it down below. It's the cheapest way to send money internationally. So there are times when you're going to need to send money to your home account. So sometimes, like, I still have bills that go out of my UK account. So sometimes I need to send money back home. But if you do it through your traditional bank, it's really expensive. And you're going to want to do this when you transfer money from your home country account to your Aussie bank account. So I would highly recommend getting a Wise card for 2 reasons. Firstly, they are the most affordable way to send money internationally. Secondly, you can actually use this card as a bank card. So if you order this whilst you're at home, you already have a bank card that you can use in Australia. So I just think it's really helpful to have more than one bank card. And then when you land in Australia, you can continue using the Wise card, or you can get an Australian bank account. Next thing is joining the Facebook groups. These have been so incredibly helpful for me as an Australian backpacker on a working holiday visa. There are so many groups, they're linked down below in my mini guide and in my ebook. I've linked all the Australian backpacker groups. And the reason they're so important is, firstly, it's such a great way to make friends before you land. You can post in there like, guys, I'm going to be in Australia, landing in this city. Is anyone going to be around in this time? And people will just comment like, yeah, let's meet up, And also you can just ask questions, because there's so many intricacies about the working holiday visa, and you're always going to have so many questions. So I find it's just such a great community to ask questions. So once this is done and you've got your date, you've got your flight, you're gonna need to pack. This is a bit controversial. This is very controversial, but I don't care because I feel like I'm a bit of a travel expert. If you're coming to Australia, ditch the backpack. It is so hot here sometimes that you will not want to be walking around in like 30, 40 degrees with a backpack on your back and a backpack on your front. Because, do you know what Australia has? It has sidewalks, it has cemented roads. There is no potholes. So you can easily wheel a suitcase around. Now I did the East Coast a few years ago with a backpack and it was so disgusting. Like it was just hot. I didn't need a suitcase. You're never going that far that you need a backpack. So if you're just going to Australia alone, highly recommend suitcase. I have a packing video that I go into more detail about this, and I think I've even done a blog post about it as well. My opinion, you don't need a backpack. Suitcase is fine. If you want to feel like a backpacker, get a backpack, but I am a backpacker and I use a suitcase and I don't care. You are nearly set to move to Australia. You've got your visa, you've got your flight, you've packed your bags, quit that job, tie up your loose ends, but whatever you do, do not cancel your phone contract. So things these days, they're just too secure, including security for your phone number with your bank account and your YouTube account and all these other accounts. I have seen people make this mistake and they have gotten into trouble. So the reason I'm saying don't quit your UK or whatever country you're from phone contract is because you will need your number. If you end your phone contract and you don't move your number to an active SIM card, you lose that phone number. And I don't know about you, but my phone number is set up to my bank accounts, it's set up to my YouTube, it's set up to emails, it's set up to so many things. And it's been like that for a long time. So if I was to get rid of my UK number, I'm screwed because I need that to get into things. What you can do is call up your phone provider, say, hey mate, moving to Australia, I don't want to be paying like 40 quid a month. What's your cheapest deal? I think I pay £6 a month for my UK phone contract. I do a pay monthly SIM that is £6 and I'm like, it's £6. I'm not gonna miss that money. That means I can still keep that number, and at times, which usually at least once a week when I log into something, I need to put that UK SIM card in to actually get that the verification code or whatever they call it. So just a little side tip, just don't get rid of your UK SIM number. So this concludes the preparation stage of moving to Australia. And if you want even more insights, you can purchase my ebook down below, which will give you even more insights into moving here on a working holiday visa. And if you want to schedule a call with me, I've recently started doing this because I get so many questions from you guys. If you're feeling like I need help planning Australia, I will do a 45-minute session with you. I will sit down and help you plan your itinerary. I will help you plan all the things you need to know. I'll help you plan your flights. I won't book any of it, but you can book that down below if you want more information as well. Stage 2, arriving in Australia. So firstly, if you've got your flights and you need to transit through a country, which most probably you will because it's such a long flight, check if you need any transit visas. I know like if Brits go through the USA, you need a visa. Make sure you get to the airport at least 3 hours early. You don't want to miss this flight. Firstly, it's very expensive and that's just hassle if you miss your flight. So definitely get there 3 hours early. That time you can relax and look forward to all the amazing adventures you're gonna have in Australia. Little tip from someone that has traveled a lot and done this flight a few times, stay awake the entire flight. I know it sounds crazy, but what you can do is you can skip jet lag completely because you're traveling for basically 24 hours. If you wake up and stay awake the whole entire flight, both legs, you will be so tired by the time you get to Australia. And then when you get to Australia, just go to bed at like 7 or 8 p.m. and get a really long sleep and you will feel so good. I've done this a few times and it's actually worked so well. Wherever you're arriving into, make sure you spend a week there so you can set up all these things that I'm about to talk about. Whatever your first accommodation is, whether that's the hotel or hostel, ask the reception if you can get your bank card and your other bits sent to this address, because when you move to a new country, something that we don't consider is that, oh God, we need an address. And that should be your first accommodation. So first things first, get a SIM card. Now, Telstra and Optus are the two main SIM card providers in Australia, but they are also the most expensive. So I have tried Vodafone. Vodafone are great if you're just in the city. As soon as you leave a city, no service. So I'm currently with a company called Boost, which is a pay-as-you-go type system. So every month, I think I put like 35 bucks on there, and then that gets me more than enough data. If you're gonna go with Optus or Telstra, they charge like $70+ per month for phone plans. So I like Boost because the service is great. I have had service in the middle of nowhere when I've been with people, they haven't even had service. Boost backs onto Telstra's network, and for some reason, I just have phone service everywhere. So once you've got your SIM card, then you're gonna need to register for a TFN, which is a tax file number. You can do this online, it takes 5 to 10 minutes, and then they send you out the TFN in the mail. If you are starting work pretty soon after you arrive, you can actually call them and say, hey, can I have my TFN number? I'm starting work. And it's just a number that they give you, and then you give that to your employer. You also need to set up a bank account. Most people go with Commonwealth, and the reason you should go with Commonwealth is because so many people with Commonwealth, it's easy to send money payments. So if you're with a group of backpackers or whatever, like surely most of them will be with Commonwealth. It's just really easy and simple to set up with them. Next thing you're gonna need to get is a super. Now that stands for superannuation. Employers legally have to pay into your super when they pay you. So any employer you have, they will ask you, what is your TFN? What are your other details? What is your super? It stands for superannuation, which is a retirement fund type of thing. It's illegal for them not to pay you, so you do have to set this up. I've gone with Australian Super. I spoke with a few Australians who have gone with Australian Super, and they said it's one of the best. And if you're not going to stay here long term, it really doesn't matter. Side note, if you do want to withdraw your super at the end of your visa, like if you're planning to never return to Australia again, you can withdraw the super, but it's taxed at 65%. So say you have $10,000 in there, the government will take $6,500 and give you $3,500. So just be mindful if you do want to stay here or you're coming back, don't touch it. There's no point. If you are from a country where you can get reciprocal healthcare, healthcare isn't free in Australia. So even if you apply for a Medicare card, I know that the UK has a reciprocal healthcare agreement, you still have to pay. When you have a Medicare card, you can go and pay for treatments or doctor's appointments. How it works is, say if the appointment is $100, you pay the doctors $100 and then they'll refund some of that money to your bank. So this is why it's so important and crucial to still get health insurance, even if you have Medicare, because Medicare doesn't cover everything. And even like an ambulance, for instance, an ambulance in New South Wales is like $900. So if I get hit by a car and they take me off in an ambulance, regardless, I'm getting a $900 bill, which I don't actually want. So that's why health insurance is so important as a traveler. Last thing you might want to consider when you're arriving in Australia is purchasing a car. Now, one of my biggest regrets in Australia from my time here is that I didn't buy a car sooner. I spent my first year here without a car. I don't know how I did it. I got by when I was living in Sydney, but I moved out of the city and I just relied on using other people's cars or public transport, which isn't that great in Australia. You will get so much out of your time here if you have a car or a camper van. Firstly, you'll just be able to see so much more of the country. You'll have increased job opportunities. So it's definitely worth buying a car off Facebook Marketplace or an auto trader type thing. I bought a crappy car for like $5,000 and I love it. I've been able to go to so many beaches and so many adventures just from having this car. Step number 3, travel. So if you're coming to Australia, the main reason that you're probably coming here is so you can travel this beautiful country. And I have traveled to over 40 countries, and I can say Australia is up there with one of the most pristine countries in the world. The reason that I love it so much is because it's a very diverse and adventurous country. Where else do you have the Great Barrier Reef and tropical rainforests and deserts and islands and mountains and oh, there's just so much going on. So if you're coming to Australia, my biggest piece of advice that I tell everyone is travel as much as you can, before you settle, because what a lot of people do is they land in Australia and they just stay there and they don't see what else Australia has to offer. So mainly people tend to stick to the East Coast. They do the infamous East Coast tour where they go from Cairns down to Sydney and Melbourne. If you're doing that, highly recommend getting the Greyhound Pass. It will make you realize how big Australia truly is, because some of those journeys are not for the faint-hearted. I specifically remember a 17-hour journey. I couldn't even tell you where, but one of the bus routes was 17 hours. So be prepared, be comfortable, but at the same time, you will have so much fun, because I met so many friends on the Greyhound tour. People tend to go down or up. So what will happen is you'll make friends and then you'll bump into them on the East Coast and you'll go off and do other trips as well. So definitely do the East Coast trip, but make sure you go to the West Coast. If you don't, I'm gonna come to your house and I'm gonna book a flight to Perth for you using your credit card, and I'm gonna make sure that you do the West Coast, because the West Coast is the best coast. The beaches are nicer. I feel like it's more rugged and beautiful, and there's just so much more going on the West Coast. Even like I've done the Great Barrier Reef and the Ningaloo Reef, and personally, I preferred the Ningaloo Reef because it was just more untouched and more beautiful. Arguably, you also have the Kimberley region, which is home to Broome and places like the Bungle Bungles, which are just insane. Like, you'll never see landscapes like that. The best way to travel the West Coast is to rent a van or go on a group tour. I've done both of these things, and there's a tour provider called Adventure Tours. They do tours of the West Coast, and I made so many friends on this trip. If you're on your own, you might want to consider a group tour, but if you want to travel the West in a van, jump on Facebook. Maybe there's some other travelers that are convoying. Maybe you can rent a van or a car and follow them too, and just have like good adventures, because that's what the West Coast is all about. And hopefully I'll live on the West Coast at some point in my life. If you are moving to Australia on your own, I do understand that you're probably feeling a bit nervous, and it is scary. Even me, I think I was 27 when I moved here. You might feel a bit nervous, which is totally natural. So you might want to do one of the group tours that are available. I think there's a company called Welcome to Travel, and there's a few other travel companies that do like a week-long introduction to Australia. So they set things up for you, like your bank and stuff like that. And they also are a great way to make friends, and then you can go off and travel with those friends. I haven't done them, but I have heard good things about them. But it's also, you can use my videos and do it all yourself. My biggest piece of advice for moving to Australia is travel as much of this country as you possibly can before choosing where you're gonna get a job and gonna get somewhere to live, because there is so many places to live. Maybe you wanna live on an island, maybe you wanna move down to Tasmania, maybe you wanna live in an outback town, maybe you wanna live in Sydney. I did it, I loved it, but I don't live there now because it's just not for me. But there is so many places and so many options and work opportunities, which I'll talk about in the next stage of moving to Australia, stage 4. Stage 4 basically is once you've traveled as much as possible. Let's talk about accommodation first. So people tend to stay in hostels, Airbnbs, camper vans, if you can afford a camper van, or you might look to rent an apartment with roommates or rent an apartment to yourself, depending on your job or your budget. The main places to look for accommodation, it's on room shares, it's flatmate.com.au. That's where I found my first like house share type of situation. And then if you're looking for apartments, it's domain.com.au or real estate. Those are the two main things. The annoying thing about trying to find somewhere to live in Australia is that they will just have like one date and time. You know, just to be aware, there is a housing crisis in Australia, but it's particularly worse in certain areas such as Sydney. I noticed when I was looking for a place in Sydney, I would go to turn up to like house inspections just for like a room, and there would be like a queue of people out the door, and I was like, oh my God, I've never experienced this. Like back in England, you do like a private viewing and then you're like, yeah, I'll take it or whatever. It's a bit different over here. Don't let the housing crisis put you off. Just persevere, be resourceful, look on Facebook Marketplace, look on flatmate.com, look on Domain, look everywhere. You will find somewhere to live. I've done it. It is stressful, but you just have to just get that over with. It's also worth looking for jobs that maybe include accommodation, because that way you don't have to find somewhere to live and you're going to save a bit of money on accommodation as well. So if you are looking to get a job and settle down somewhere, maybe consider areas that aren't full of other backpackers, i.e. Cairns. So I have loads of friends that live in Cairns and they're always telling me what the job situation is like there. And I know people that have left Cairns because they just haven't been able to find a job. Think about this. If you are moving to an area where there's loads of other backpackers, you are now in competition with loads of other backpackers to firstly find accommodation, but find a job. And I know that people tend to go to Cairns because that's the end of the East Coast route, and you can also get your 88 days done there. So if you do want to extend your visa, you'll know, I think in the first few months, if you want to stay in Australia, it's definitely worth doing the 88 days as soon as possible. So that way you can get it out the way with and you can just enjoy your time in Australia. There are so many more opportunities since all the rules changed about the 88 days. Historically, it was just like you'd have to go and work on a banana farm in the middle of nowhere and get your 88 days ticked off. And now you can do it in things like flood relief, bushfire recovery, tourism and hospitality in the north of the Tropic of Capricorn, I think that's what it's called. But you type in the postcode on the government's website, I'll link this down below, and you can work out which areas you can go and live to do your 88 days. If you're looking to find a hospitality job, you're gonna need to get your RSA, which is your responsible sales of alcohol. It's like a course and a qualification that you need to work in a restaurant or work in a bar and legally be able to serve alcohol. I've heard from other people as well, the best way to get jobs like that is just to walk around town, hand out your resume, that way they can see your face. Now, I have provided information on how to get jobs before. I have other videos like this, but I'm going to ignore one piece of advice. So there's a website called Seek that is one of the main job platforms in Australia. Now, the reason I don't think this is a good website for a backpacker is because one of the questions that you always have to tick is what visa are you on? And of course you tick that you're on a temporary visa. And I have done like outreach with getting jobs like this in the past, and I've never had any luck. And I've spoken with other people and they've said the same thing. And I think it's because they see that you're on a temp visa and they think, no, we'll pick someone else who's on a permanent visa. So it's just a little insight to finding jobs in Australia. The reason I love Australia is because there are so many travel and job opportunities here. Back in England, most people work in an office or in healthcare. Here, you can go work in the mines. You can go work on a farm. You can go work in a tourism place on an island somewhere. The jobs here are just a bit different. So definitely consider other job opportunities. Be open to jobs that maybe you didn't do back home. And my biggest piece of advice is don't try and replicate your life that you had back home. I always say this. The biggest mistake that I made when I first came to Australia is I tried to like replicate the routine that I had back in the UK. And then I'm like, Dain, you're living in a different country. Let's just see what happens in Australia. And I did that and it turned out better for me. This is something that I've definitely struggled with. Finding friends can be difficult. So if you are looking for friends, look on Facebook. There's so many groups. If you're into fitness is such a big thing out here. So that's one way to make friends. Bumble BFF, I've made a few friends through there. Facebook groups, you can put a little post in, say, anyone moving to Sydney this weekend? That's what I did, and I actually made a few friends through that. The reason I found it difficult to make friends is firstly because I'm always traveling, so I'm never like permanent enough to put enough time and energy into friendships. But I find like when I was living in Sydney, it's a transient city. So people that go into Sydney, stay there for a few months and leave. I mean, that's what I did, but it just makes it more difficult to make friends. And then if you go and live in more local places, people already have their set friendship groups, their established friends. So it can be difficult to like merge into that, especially when you're just like here on a temporary visa. So once you've got your job, depending on what that is, you need to remember to file your tax return. It is illegal not to do a tax return in Australia. So the tax year runs from the 1st of July for that consecutive year. The best way to do it is hiring an accountant. If you are a sole trader, you will pay between $300 to $500 to do a tax return. If you're working through a TFN, the tax just like, if you're just getting taxed by your boss, you will probably pay around $100 to $150. This is a very busy time. It's around like July to October, you can do your tax returns. If you earn under $45,000 on a working holiday visa in that tax year, you don't need to do a tax return. If you earn more than that, you do have to do a tax return. It's very confusing. If you're also from an NDA country such as the UK, you may be taxed as an Aussie resident. So just don't mess around with taxes, just get an accountant to do it. That's what I do. And it's just easier because I don't understand taxes. I've never had to do that before. and it's just easier to pay someone else to do it. Just need a little coffee break. So those are all the tips and advice I can give you for having the best year of your life. And I'm gonna end on this. If you know that you want to stay in Australia long term, consider your options early. By this, I mean, if you realize, okay, I wanna stay here, I wanna extend, make sure you get your 88 days done in your first year, and you can do like 6 months in your second year to get a third year, or consider sponsorship. So when you're looking for jobs, it's definitely worth exploring with your potential employers. Do you offer sponsorships? Like, look early on, get your ducks in a row. Unfortunately, I actually have to leave Australia because I did not get my ducks in a row. So I actually have to leave this weekend, which is a bit awkward because I kind of like it here. But this is what happens with people that come to Australia. They come here, they love it, they don't want to leave. So definitely look into your long-term options as early on as possible. That way you have enough time to figure out how you're gonna stay here forever. And lastly, have the best time of your life. I could probably sit here for like 4 days and tell you about my experience in Australia, but it's been one of the best things I did. I came here on a whim after traveling the world for a year, and it was exactly what I needed. I've just had the best time. I've seen so many cool places. I've had like so much personal growth and business growth, and I've made loads of friends. And yeah, just do it. Just go and do it and have the best time. Don't put pressure on yourself. It is what it is. Whatever's meant to happen, it's meant to happen on your Australia working holiday visa journey. I apologize. That was a long video. Thank you for sitting through that. I hope it's helped you. If it has, leave some comments down below. Go follow me on Instagram and all the other socials, and check out the resources that I'll leave down below. A big thanks to Safety Wing for partnering with me on this video. I can truly say that I am so passionate about the products that Safety Wing offers. I've been a customer of them for 3 years, and that is why I'm always banging on about them. They're one of the best travel insurance for long-term travel, including moving to Australia, because you never know what's going to happen. So that's why it's so important you get travel insurance. So thanks again for sponsoring this video. I'm going to leave it there. So until next time, take care and peace out.